and I'm the owner of the Net Loft in Cordova, Alaska, and also the founder of the Cordova Gansey Project. I'm here today to talk to you about the project and about Ganseys. First question people will ask if you talk to them about Ganseys is, what is a Gansey? And so Gansey is the name given to the traditional hard-wearing, hand-knit woolen pullover worn by fishermen fishing for herring off the coasts of Britain, particularly in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The natural fiber wool garments are supremely practical and functional, more flexible than a jacket, but robust enough to keep out wind and light spray. I'm reading from a card and information that you can find on our website, thenetloftak.com. So if there's anything that I talk about today, you can go to our website and you can find more information there. So what is the Cordova Gansey Project? The hope and the desire of the Cordova Gansey Project is to educate and promote the making and wearing of hand-knit wool gear and to reintroduce fishermen sweaters to the active and present commercial fishing industry, especially the next generation youth who are transitioning into leadership and ownership, as well as for those whose outdoor lifestyle would benefit from the special features of wool handmade garments custom knit for them by loved ones. We hope also through this project that our knitting would be a vehicle for stories to be shared of the past and present faces behind the fish and the fishing towns within the state and beyond, and that the Cordova Gansey Project would represent this collection of knitters who catch this same vision and through these stories help communicate the lives and lifestyle behind the industry. The origins and continuing story of the project may be read about on the Net Loft Traditional Handcrafts blog beginning. So a lot of what I'm going to say here, there's a lot more information on the blog that tells a detailed timeline of how the project came about. But I'm going to give you just kind of a brief overview of how it started. The project actually originated in 2014 after going to Shetland Wool Week, but it goes farther back, and if you read the blog you'll really get to know more about how that is as being a commercial fishing family. So actually by the time I got to 2014 and walked in to the entryway of Shetland Wool Week and saw this beautiful exhibit of hand-knit flags and sweaters and this poster that had these women all knitting and that were the herring lassies, it was a culmination for me of years previous of the shop and also of our family history as commercial fishermen. And so it was a timely thing, and everything, the whole project was one thing after another where I actually felt like there was a tap on my shoulder that I was supposed to start this project. So what happened at the Shetland Wool Week was not only was there this exhibit, which was actually the Moray Firth project, and it was a Gansey project that was about the Moray Firth in Scotland, and those were their sweaters, and sweaters were on exhibit in many of the places where I took classes. So it kept being there, and I kept looking at these garments, and they also had given us information about wool and the properties of wool, and though I'd been working with wool for years, it just broke it down about how, as a working garment, how functional and environmentally friendly that using wool for garments. And I just kept having this feeling inside that something was stirring inside of me. And then I was able to take a class with Stella Rue, who is the author of this book, Dutch Ganseys, and it was on a actual fishing boat, which I didn't know at the time had been a boat that had been one of the original fishing boats that were the herring boats. And there's more about it in my blog that specifies the details of it. But this class with Stella just turned a major light on for me. And she has this book of traditional Ganseys and more traditional Dutch Ganseys. And recently this was released, this traditional, in English, traditional Dutch Ganseys for children. And her enthusiasm and just this stirring that was going on in me, I just remember having conversations with her about starting a tradition and how traditions were started. So from the Shetland Islands, I was able to go to the island of Fair Isle, and I met with Kathy Kuhl, and I continued this discussion on traditions and how traditions are started. And I just had this stirring inside of me about that there would be this idea of having a Cordova Gansey project and putting our fishermen into fishermen's sweaters as actual working gear. And so from there, I came back and I called up Beth Brown-Reinsel. And so a lot of these books had been in my library. I had this book at the shop, and I had this book at the shop here for years. They were ones that Mary Wright's book on Cornish Ganseys and Beth's book, and I actually even had this picture hanging in my shop from the very beginning, and it had always interested me. And so when I got back, I thought, okay, I'm going to call Beth Reinsel and find out if she would be up for helping us start this project. So I did, and in 2015 she came and we spent 4 days with her, and she got us started. And we had a core group of about 20 people that all kind of jumped in and said, yeah, we'll do this with you. And so from there, we also had Bon Marie Burns came, and she had designed a more contemporary Gansey called the Fisher Lassie, and she came and spent some time with us. So we had a group that met for about a year, monthly, and that was the core group, and everybody was just there helping each other, and I would contact Beth if I needed help, and we were just helping each other along, the way, I guess, friend to friend of the Fisher Lassies were. And so from that original group, probably 3/4 of them have finished. And that's one thing I wanted to mention about Ganseys was they kind of have their own time. And so it's the kind of thing that when it's the right time, it's the right time. And I tell that to people not to worry about if you didn't finish yours right yet. When it's the right time, it'll be the right time. So from there, we've had a couple other Fisher Folk Fiber and Friends events and brought in people and we actually brought that Maury Firth exhibit here to Cordova, and it was in our museum. And then we also had, and we brought the woman that wrote this book, and we had the whole exhibit of those sweaters. And then we also had Stella Rue come in 2016, and she brought the Dutch Ganseys for us to see, and she taught some classes. So it's just been something that's just grown over time, and we're just still learning. And we now continue to meet on, we have a group that meets on Zoom, and it's an international group, and we have speakers from the UK come and speak, and so it's just gradually one thing to the next. So anyway, I want to just talk now a little bit, that's the history, but I want to talk a little bit about the Ganseys themselves. So this is an example of a traditional Gansey, and it was sent to us by a woman named Vicki that is in the Azores, and she wanted to be part of the project where she is. It's too warm to wear Gansey, and so she sent this Gansey to us. So you can see here's some of the things that are in a traditional Gansey. And so this one, there's some things about how the construction of them. Usually the patterns are either completely vertical or they're horizontal with bands going up like this. And the construction is basically just a tube. It's a rectangle. And the sleeves, it's a drop shoulder, and sometimes there's a strap here, and but it also has the feature of a gusset. So they're more fitted, but the gusset gives it flexibility, so as you lift your arms up and down, you have more freedom of movement, because ideally this is a working garment. That's what it's all about. It's made to work in, and doesn't have a lot of bag to it because you don't want to get it caught in things. And so you can see here that's just the sleeves. It's a basic, the sleeve just is a graduated, it's like a trapezoid, and then the diamond shaped gusset, and this one here, you can see the same thing. Here's how this goes. This is the Cordova Gansey that Beth ended up doing after she had participated and been our mentor for the project, and she took this idea. When I first started the project, I had to think of a kind of a logo or something, and so I just painted this little watercolor. There's watercolor here of it's on this here. You'll see it on everything, and I just basically had just looked at a bunch of patterns and just made it up. I wasn't thinking it was going to be anything that would stick with us. So that pattern became a little needle gauge that we give out when you join the project. It's a little miniature needle gauge. And so Beth saw that, and she took that and used that and inspired her to make the Cordova Gansey, which is this over here. And that's in her newest book here, that she did a revised version. And so here is the Cordova Gansey in here. So that's this one that's over here. And it's knit in the Cordova color. So this is a Cordova color, and it is based on a NASA photograph, an aerial photograph of the Copper River Delta of where they fish, which is for Copper River salmon, and it's where the glacier waters come down and meet the Pacific Ocean. And so it creates this beautiful silty colors, and so that's where that color comes from. And it's made in England by the people who make the traditional Gansey yarn. And so this is it. Frangipani Yarns are the people that make a 5-ply worsted spun, well-wearing yarn that works really beautifully for these garments. And so Russ and Jan Stanland of Frangipani asked if I wanted to have a color for Cordova, and they heard about the project. We'd been in discussion a lot, and I was just trying to learn everything I could about it. And then they offered to make a color for us, which was really wonderful. And so this is the Cordova color, and it's here at the shop. And then also I have someone in the UK that is selling it so that people there have more accessibility of where it originated. And so if you go back to the Gansey itself, it was traditionally knit by the fisher lassies that were there for the herring industry. And I feel like I had that connection because I'd worked in a cannery before, and I've worked on a fishing boat, and I could relate so much to their lifestyle and moving and along and following the fish. And what people should know is that if you're a knitter, your history as a knitter goes back to this. With the process that we did it in a way that we followed Beth's book and went through the process that she had in there. If you go to our website, you can order an introductory pack from us, and what you'll get is a PDF, and it's a booklet that I'm in the middle of doing a revision of, and it goes hand in hand with Beth's book here, as well as other books that you might want to have as a resource. But the basic thing is she's got you from the very beginning. There's some history, and then she has you make a small Gansey. So in making this small Gansey, you've got the different components that you need to learn about. One thing is there's this Channel Island cast on along the bottom, which is a traditional. This is a flapped bottom, which is also common, and then the initials in the corner, the split side seam. These are all characteristics of Ganseys. The gusset, how you treat your shoulders. This has a shoulder strap, and she teaches you how to pick up and do a shoulder strap, and then picking up around the sleeve and picking up the gusset and working down and finishing. It's all done in one piece. There's no seams in it. It's all done, and you're picking up and knitting, and when you get done you just tuck your tails. That being said, people do other modifications to it, but this is basically true traditional Gansey style. In the book she has you doing this the way the book is formatted. They have it so step by step you're taken through making this small Gansey, and then you go back through the book again, and using chart paper, you have a notebook that you keep track of your notes, where you get your measurements. So there's in our booklet, we kind of go hand in hand with hers, and we have ideas for how to interview the person that you're doing the Gansey for, even if it's yourself. and how to take measurements, how to find a garment that fits the person the way they want to fit it, because the whole part about designing a Gansey for somebody is that you're working from the inside out of that person. You're, instead of trying to match somebody else's gauge and the way they've designed the shape, every part of this person is able to be designed by you and incorporated into this Gansey, whether they've got different shapes and sizes of people that can be accommodated for every part, how and the comfort of the person that's wearing it in mind. So I always say that Ganseys are knit from the inside out rather than trying to fit a garment onto a person from the outside in. So things that we found in working with that knitting Gansey book is, first starting off making the little miniature Gansey, then making a small swatch to kind of get an idea of your gauge, and then making a circular swatch. And all those instructions are in the little booklet, and the circular swatch is something that we came up with as a group, with our first group, that helps to get a very accurate gauge. And it also gives you room to experiment with some of the motifs that you are making up, some of the things you're going to design, some of your own motifs that have some meaning to you. When I took the class from Stella in the Shetland Islands, she asked us, what's important to you? What has meaning to you? And what are some things that you could create some graphic representation of without it being, just an exact representation, but just something graphically that could be interpreted to incorporate that into what you're making. And because that was what originally they did. A lot of them have meanings to them. And in the book, The Traditional Dutch Gansey, there's another book that's on our website, a book of cables, and that they talk about some of the meanings of some of the different motifs. So what I did when I first did my first one, this is from the one I did for my son Nate, who was taking over part of the operation for the fishing, for commercial fishing. I started off with a little small swatch, then I started onto this one, and I did the Channel Island cast on along the bottom, and it could be made into a hat because these can fold over and be attached together, but I just end up keeping my swatches. It's a swatch that's circular, that basically is like going across the whole front of the sweater. And when you do it, like when I first started off, it was I just didn't feel like the hand was tight enough. And so I changed needles, and you can see where I changed needles because it kind of has that bulge there. And so I used it as a way to get the right feel that I wanted, and I also used it as a way to practice and play with designs that I was fooling around with. So I had interviewed Nathan and asked him some things and drew some pictures and did some sketches, and all kept within my logbook. And then I played with them here. And a lot of times when you do something in your charting paper, and even though it is knitting chart paper, it doesn't always look the same when you go and put it on into your swatch. So I didn't like this, so then I did it a different way, but I kept it all intact. And this has some trees I was experimenting with, a different sort of tree, trying to make some spruce trees, and then some blueberry leaves because he likes to go blueberry picking during down times. And then I was trying to make snow-capped mountains here, but they curved and I didn't know it was going to do that. And so I ended up using that motif and making it up as a little wave motif that I ended up incorporating into this and then in the next Gansey that I did as well. So it's a really great place to experiment. You have this whole circumference, which is about 20 inches, to really establish what your gauge is after it's been washed and laid flat to dry. And so I end up with getting something to like a 4th decimal point just to really get it, so that by the time you've got 300 some stitches there, you don't want to have to rip it out. You don't want it to not fit. So I found that this way was a really effective way to get a spot on gauge. So this was Nathan's, and so Nathan's is not here right now. It's on him, and he's wearing it now. And so the next Gansey that I made after that was for my son-in-law Michael, who he and my daughter Nellie are fishermen here, both gill netters and seiners. And so he has a boat called the Pelican, and so I needed to experiment with pelican beaks. And so I was trying to put some kind of a geometric design that would resemble pelican beaks in some way. And so his is in this Cordova colorway, and this Cordova color was dyed for us by Frangipani Yarn. And so this is it here, and it goes with the Copper River Delta where the ocean meets the glacier river waters. Anyway, so his is that Cordova color, and I was experimenting. This is a cork line here. And anyway, by the time I got done, I kind of had learned from that one approximately that I was best using a 0 for me in my loose knitting. And then I used this to I went right with the 0 from the get-go, so you don't see a lot of bulge or change here. And then I measured, because each yarn, as you're using it, when it's dyed, it can have a different gauge. And that's what he told me, the owner of Frangipani said, Russ said, be sure that you have people do gauge swatches for whichever color, because different colors have different gauges because of the effect of the dye on the yarn. So each one I do, I play with those patterns that I'm doing, and then I check the gauge for that colorway. So, and they're slightly different on this one. So the finished one, after having this, I transferred my design. I figured out that helps get me your 100%, and that 100% means how many stitches that I'm going to need to put. So if his was 46 inches of his finished, this helped me get a real accurate per inch number that I could use as my, when I multiplied it out times 46, that was my 100%. And in Beth's book, she has a whole page on calculations. And so you just go to that page in designing your own Gansey. She's got a whole section here on planning and designing your own. And also throughout the book, she has along the way that when you are doing the little Gansey, for each chapter, it'll say for the sample Gansey and then for the full-size Gansey. So once you've worked your way through the first half of the book, making the small Gansey, the little sampler, then you work yourself back through it again to do the full-size Gansey. And you just go through each bit by bit, you break it down. What do you want for your edging? What kind of a ribbing do you want? Do you want it to have a flap? What do you want to do on your side seam? What kind of patterning do you want? Do you want it vertical? Do you want it horizontal? And then what do you want your motifs to be? How do you want your shoulder strap to be? And you just break it down to each of those components. And it's like picking and choosing each of those. And then you using this formula, once you've gotten that gauge, you take that, you get your 100%, and then she's got this really wonderful chart that you plug that into. And once you know that, you transfer that to your chart. And then you've just got this big rectangle, and now you know how big to make your rectangle. And everything is right here in your chart. And then you just use this like a blueprint of a house. And you don't have to fill every single thing out of it. Once you've kind of established it and you've got a repeat, I usually just have the first bit of the repeat. If I want it centered, I start in the center and do this half, and then I just mirror it. And you can put in when your gusset starts. And so there's certain things that we can help you with. There's certain things that are really, really critical, like where do you start that gusset? Because once you start that gusset, that determines how big this arm area is. This is a real critical part of the Gansey. But as you go through each thing bit by bit, lay it out ahead of time, then you know right where to start that gusset. But that takes a little pre-planning. and we're here to help you with that process. And I'm just really grateful for Beth and her work, and the Traditional Dutch Gansey's book has the information for designing your own in that way. There are many patterns in books that are already made, but if you go to a lot of these ones here, they're using this basic rectangle shape, figuring out how big it has to be. Once you know that 100%, basically, if you know somebody's 46 inches finished size, and you know your gauge, you know your rectangle, then it's like drawing in what you want. This book by Gladys Thompson is not so much a pattern. Each part are the patterns and the motifs of different regions. But the basic Ganseys at the beginning, which is just this, whatever kind of edging that you want to put on the bottom, and then what happens in your rectangle here. And in here, there's all kinds of different patterns of different things that they did, but it's all fitting into this basic shape. The original ones were a lot shorter. The ones now are a little bit longer because pants lengths are where their fall are a little bit longer, and you want to make sure that goes together right. And so I find that the ones that we're making now are longer than the traditional ones. So that, and like this book here, it's really helpful that we have, is the Cornish Ganseys and Knit Frocks by Mary Wright. This is a wonderful book that also has, it's just filled with patterns. So it's just a matter of, and then there's a wonderful part of history. And that is a big part of this whole thing, is connecting yourself with that history of the Fisher lassies that have come before us and the camaraderie that they had with one another. So a lot of Ganseys are about our protection and love. And we've had in our Zoom session visitors that have come from the UK, and they've shared with us, and a lot of what you're putting into this is protection of love for wherever they're going to be, whether they're going to be off hiking or fishing or in an office or wherever they're going to end up wearing this. They're actually a work sweater, so they're made to work in. One thing I wanted to comment is on this next one that I made for Michael. So this is Michael's Gansey here, and I showed you the swatch. So here is the finished one. This has been worn for 3 fishing seasons. It has been worn and worn and worked in, and was really the mission of what was behind this whole project, was to equip our fishermen who are out at sea, working hard in dangerous conditions, and to put them in something that was good environmentally, as well as just as a functionally well-working garment. And there's wonderful features about wool that make it the ideal working garment. But with this frangipani yarn, it wears so amazingly well. There's no pilling on it. It washed out all the silt water that had gotten in the sleeves and everything that had turned them gray. It all washed out. I'm amazed at how well this yarn has endured, and so you can see why it's the traditional fishing yarn. It just really, it's a 5-ply and wears quite well. So for his sweater, the things that I've incorporated into it are I did the Channel Island cast on at the bottom, then the flap, the traditional flap, and a Channel Island rib. There's his initials. The seam, here's the side seam that's on there. So those are some of the kind of the things that identify a Gansey. Then his gusset here, and I put a little donut under his arm of the gusset. People will put little Easter eggs sort of into their Ganseys. Here it goes, I call these salmon eggs, salmon bones, fishing net, cork line, the waves, the mountains, the eye of God for protection, the pelican beaks after the name of his boat, and the pelicans are flying this way and the pelicans are flying that way. And then the winds of prosperity of that. And then this one just has this type of a top here where they've come together. The one I did for Nathan I put a kind of a wandering cable strap that went all the way down. So there's different ways to deal with that part. And his was also done in a traditional way where this pattern just goes straight across. You can see I ended it. This is a perfect rectangle. This part, the body's a perfect rectangle. And then I just have this little bit of strap part to connect it to bridge that shoulder part, and then pull around for the neck and picked up for the neck. This is done completely traditional style, and in that Cordova color. And when you get done with your project, we have little labels for you. So one of the things you let people know that you want to be in the project, and then we are here to help, and then we send you a little label when you get done, and it says hand knit by, and you can put a little note in there and the date that you finished it, and then Cordova Gansey Project. So we give you that when you get done, and some little goodies. So that was Michael's Gansey. And then my daughter wanted hers out of a yarn that was the same as a yarn of a Gansey that I wore since the time she was a little baby. So she said, I want that yarn of that sweater that I used to snuggle up to you. So this is more of an Aran weight. It's a New Zealand Corriedale yarn. And she did not want the flap. She wanted this. So that's part of the interview process. So I did do the Channel Island rib with Channel Island cast on with a twisted rib. There's her initials. And on hers, I put a cabled, the false seam. I put a little mock cable, and then she's got her Cordova fish is right there. I don't think I talked about that on the other, but we ask each person to put there's a little fish motif to incorporate into each one. I put a fish on one arm and a heart on the other. So there's her heart right there. So that's what I've been doing. And then her motifs are the salmon eggs, the fishnet, the mountains, and then I have to look at it again really quick here. I did the blueberry leaves and trees, and then mountains above that. So the waves and the berries and the trees and that. And on the back side, I did leaves instead because she's a forager. And then I did a little X's and O's across the back, like hugs and kisses across the back. And then just the same type of a ridge here, there, and then just picked up. So hers has a little bit of a shaped neck. So you can see it doesn't go, there's a little bit of shaping that happened here when I was doing it. So some people want a little lower neck. You can do that. That's the whole thing about these is part of making that person feel comfortable. These are knit from the inside out. The person is what's important, and then it's enrobing them with your love and all the stitches that you've made, where you have handled the fiber with your fingers, all of it. And anyway, so that was Nellie's Gansey. So right now, my current Gansey that I'm working on is for my son Matthew, and Matthew is who is filming this presentation for me. And so he's my fisher filmmaker. He has been fishing since he was a young boy, and so there's certain things that have been incorporated into his. So I have the notebook to kind of give you an idea. So here's my current Gansey, and I use this kind of as a journal, logbook, and different things, and I find it's really helpful. So the yarn that I'm using here is a yarn that is New Zealand Corriedale. It's the 12 ply that I did, same one that I used for my daughter. That was his choice. And hand dyed by Ana Hernandez. Bosque Amistoso is her what she calls her dyeing, and I get the yarn from New Zealand and she dyes on it. And this color's Wake, and I'm using this seaweed color here. And so what I have is, this is my notebook here, and just kind of showing you the process. And I put my yarn labels in here with washi tape, and then I did a little sketch here with watercolor after we had talked, and I did an interview with him and asked him some questions and what kind of symbols that he wanted to have incorporated with it. And then I photocopied the worksheet that was in the book of Best Book, and I filled in all the things after I'd done my gauge swatch, and more different things here. And he, we had this nice talk, and we took measurements and all of that, and recorded all of that. And then a lot of this is my calculations and figuring out my how I was going to do my letters before I put them onto the big chart. So a lot of my little calculations and figuring and little sketches, and I use this knitter's chart paper to collect ideas. So if there was a pattern I wanted to try, I would play charting in here before I put it onto my big one, so I wasn't erasing on my big one, and then see how that worked, mess around with it, and then put my final onto the other. So I find this really helpful. It also helps with just all I record all by date what I did so I can remember, and then just play around. And then I had another piece of chart paper when I was trying to experiment for my swatch. And I didn't know how I wanted to do the film, because he's a filmmaker, and I wanted to design a motif that had film in it. And then I just, continued on. Right now, here's where I am in this notebook, but it's so helpful to have a place to keep, for each Gansey, I keep a notebook, and then I have each of my Gansey swatches. So for this one, the swatch that I did, here's his swatch, and I actually still have it on the needles. I washed it with the needles on it because I just still wasn't sure about some things, and I wanted to be able to keep working on it if I needed to. So you can see I do the swatch exactly the way that I do the big sweater. Exactly, usually I put it onto these needles, but usually I use exactly the needles that I'm going to use on my bigger one, because a lot of times this shaft size is shorter with a 16-inch needle, and so I do it in the same way. Everything would be as close to what I'm going to be doing on the big one I'm going to do on the little one, so that gauge is really going to be accurate. And so you can kind of see I bring this around to here and do this and this one goes around here to do this other side, but I still knit circularly. So that was his, and I have a cable here, I have different film widths, I have different types of this zigzag here. I'm trying to figure out how I want the motifs to look, and I use this as kind of my playground to figure that out. He also wanted a DNA cable to go down his arm. So my swatch, I was playing it around with it here with one kind of something. I didn't like that edge, and so then I changed it. So the swatches are really important. So he's going to have this part here, not up here, going down his arm with a DNA cable kind of going all the way down from the shoulder strap down. That's going to be incorporated. So the swatches help you develop your components that you're going to put in together. So the final, this is his right here, and it's got the 2 sets of needles here, and then at any time I can just slip it on him and he can try that on. And initials here, Channel Island cast on, seaweed, a flap, little braid for the false seam. Each thing, those are your components. What are you going to do on the edge? What are you going to do for your ribbing area? What are you going to do for your side seam? And when are you going to start your pattern? When does your gusset start? I've already started my gusset. And how long do you want your gusset to be? So each time you just ask these questions one by one by one, and then you just sort of fill in the blank. It's a rectangle, pretty simple, and the structure is pretty simple, so it's kind of fun, like coloring in squares, but anyway, so you can see that most of Ganseys are one solid color. I did add this little edge to it, but traditionally, usually it's a single color, knits and purls, occasionally some cabling as well, but it's really up to you. So those are the Ganseys that I've made and that I'm in the midst of right now. This Gansey that I have on is the Cordova Gansey that originated with a watercolor that I had done kind of to be a motif for the project. and it was then made into a little needle gauge that then Beth, from that needle gauge, designed this Cordova Gansey and used the Cordova color and then put it into her newest book. And so that's this one here, and it's really, it came from not a sketch from a sweater, but a sweater from a sketch. And so we thank Beth Brown Reinsel for this. It's called the Cordova Gansey in the Cordova colorway. One of the things I wanted to mention is the influence of a friend, Bonnie, that when I lived in the bunkhouse, and she was knitting all the time. And this was an example of a Gansey that in traditional style, but then modified with the little clips. She was a net mender here in town, and she added that lovely element of the split here and putting the Scandinavian clips on there, and she used Gladys Thompson's book there to help her as she was designing that years ago, and then she gave that to me eventually. So she was an influence, but just to see how you can modify things. Through this project, some other people have gotten involved and have contributed patterns and some other accessories. So it doesn't just apply to making, the project also includes hats and wristers and gloves. And so one of the things Tin Can Knits made us a bowline hat with a heavier weight yarn. That works really well. And then there's, as in that, we have little tags that you can put on. We give you when you get that pattern. There's a sweater also, the bowline sweater by Tin Can Knits. Kate Davies has designed this pink fish, which pink fish in Scotland is a salmon, a wild salmon. And that's these right here, and we actually have there's a couple really wonderful DK yarns that we have that are British breed DK yarns that would be wonderful. These are the fish scales in that, and they are part of the project and can be used. And also, Val Koval made these little fish wristers and fisherman wristers, and they're really hard-wearing, hard-working ones for working outside with just when it's not quite glove weather, you need your fingertips. And those are George's wristers, and these are actually knit in Upton Yarns dyed some wool for us, and they did it with a 5-ply indigo from a U.S. breed sheep, and it's 5-ply dyed with indigo. It comes in a various kind of shades of different blues. Anyway, so that's also included, and we have a little woven label that you can put on that could be part of the project. So you can participate even with a project like a wristers or a hat. And then there are some things that would be a good project if you just wanted to just kind of understand chart reading. If you haven't done much chart reading, there's this pattern by Chic Knits, and it's the Chunky Gansey hat. And that is a really easy pattern that if you just haven't ever done chart reading, it's got a very simple chart to do, and it's basically just some really simple Gansey patterns and something to just warm up to it if you're feeling like you just need to do a little bit of something first before you do it. Some people will do a child's Gansey, and that's like Stella Rue's book is really good for that, for doing a child's Gansey to get started. And then there's various patterns that are out there for some children's patterns. We do have some here that are already designed patterns that you can also take that pattern if you want and incorporate, what you want into it. So there's a lot of options for what to do. So we thank you so much for listening about the Gansey project. And what I also wanted to share with you is hand in hand to our fishing industry is the influx of birds to the Copper River Delta and the value of our Copper River watershed. And part of our goal and mission of this project is also to bring an awareness to our fishery and to this watershed that we have here, to the Delta and Prince William Sound, and the importance and the value of preserving these areas for the commercial fishing industry and for recreation, and We have a project that is the Copper River Delta, Alaska Birds by Hand project. And so this is also on our website, as well as the Cordova Gansey Project information. And kind of the birds come first and then the fish come right after that. And this is an example of a one that could be done for the Birds by Hand project right now. We have around 300 birds. We put them on display in our museum during our Shorebird Festival. Didn't this year because of everything going on, but we have in the past. We've even traveled to Mexico with the exhibit, and we're trying to grow it to 1,000 birds. And we invite you to make a bird and send it here. We have them from Europe and other places as well. And this is a Gansey bird that was designed by Evelyn Clark. And I did this one out of hand spun and then mushroom dyed beak here in memory of my mom. And so you can do them in memory of someone or in honor of someone, or just make a fun bird of some way. Arne and Carlos have a really good book on knitted birds, and we've got all kinds of examples. Also, embroidered birds are welcome, and painted birds are, that are three-dimensional. It's nice if it's something three-dimensional that we can hand paper birds are welcome. And so we invite you to participate in that as well. We welcome all birds from all over, and there's information about, you fill out a form for that, telling where your bird came from and a little bit of the background of just like what you want to tell us about your bird and some things, which we keep a notebook and we tag each bird the way the birds get tagged. So just wanted to invite you to that as well. When you finish your Gansey, you do get a label that that you can write in, and also we ask you then to document. We have a questionnaire, so we're trying to build a notebook of different people's experiences in making Gansey, so we have this collective knowledge. I want to thank Beth Brown-Reinzel and Stella Rue and Deb Galanders in England, and several people that have there's so many people that have helped us along our way, and we really appreciate that very much. And all of the knitters that have joined us in the project as we've done it from all over. I want to thank you for watching and listening to our presentation about the Cordova Gansey Project. This whole project is really one that is, from the very beginning, it was something very personal. And I think for each person that participates, there's there's a lot of connection to the person that you're knitting with, and also to this great history that we are connecting up with, and all those knitters that have come before us, and through those patterns that you're repeating again, that some of those you're putting them, reintroducing them into your pieces with meaning and purpose. And I hope that you know that you can contact us if there's any questions that you might have in getting started, and whether you use an existing pattern or whether you design your own, they're all welcome to be part of the project. You can be anywhere. You can use the yarn that you have. You can put in the designs that you want to do, but just know that we're here to help. And one thing that as I was knitting, I was thinking, this is a lot of stitches. I mean, it takes a while to do it, and especially if you don't have time to just knit all the time. It takes me a while to get these done. The first one I think took me 1.5 years. Other people have gotten them done in a month, but me, I just did it, and it took a while. And so each of them has been an investment of my most precious thing, is my time. And as I touched each stitch and thinking about that person and incorporating love and the desire for protection of that person, I thought of this: many stitches, much love. And a lot of our things also say, all you knit is love. So we really feel this has a lot of a project that has a lot of heart to it, and want you to know that we're here to help you in any way that we can. I'm going to have close with a Kahlil Gibran quote that I think encapsulates what we feel the project is all about. And I just thank you so much for watching, and take care. He said, "And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit. Work is love made visible.